Today, the process that we're going to be doing is a double pamphlet binding. All right, the supplies that we need are going to be from our kit. We'll need that bone folder today, although I will say if you don't have the bone folder, often I use the handle of a pair of scissors to help with the creasing. So either one of those will work well. We're also going to need our awl. And you can use an awl. If you don't have the awl, you can use something sharp like an ice pick or a safety pin, thumbtack, things like that. We're going to use that to kind of poke our holes today for the binding. And then we're going to need our embroidery floss and tapestry needle. So I'm going to be using just some green embroidery floss today. We don't need a whole lot. And I'm going to be using that tapestry needle. Now, if you don't have any more embroidery floss, I know we've been making quite a few books, so you may be running low. You can use all sorts of other things like yarn, ribbon, string, thread, twine, anything that's kind of stringy like will work well for this process. And then a tapestry needle, the benefit of using the tapestry needle is that it has a large hole that we can use to kind of thread thicker fibers to weave through. So those are the things that we'll need out of our kit today. We'll also need a pair of scissors, always handy to have scissors. And another thing that's helpful, although not necessary, is having a little ruler on hand. So I'll be using my ruler today. On top of all that, we need our paper material. So I'm going to be using some copy paper today, which is an 8x10 or 8.5x11, sorry, paper. I'm going to be using that for my inside pages. But just like other weeks, you can use whatever inside pages you enjoy. If they want to do found pages like newspaper or books, or if you want to do construction paper, junk mail, copy paper, notebook paper, just gather. I'm going to be using 4 pages of the copy paper today. So just kind of gather enough to make those 4 pages. So you also need, on top of the inside pages, you're going to need cover pages. And so what I'm using for my cover pages is just some watercolor paper that I've painted. I always, I always joke, and I've probably said it here before, but I always joke about how my road to becoming an artist was the same road to becoming a hoarder. And it's because I have so many like pages that I kind of collect. I don't throw anything out. But the benefit is that they make wonderful pages for things like this, making cover pages. So I'm going to be using a couple of those pages today, probably this one, for my my cover page today. And so, as I said earlier, we're going to be doing a double pamphlet binding. And so this is an example of that. This is some eco-printed paper that I did earlier. And you can see that there are 2 signatures that we're going to be working with today. So as just a reminder, a signature is what each of these like little booklets are called. So we have 2 signatures that we're going to be working with today, which is why it's called double pamphlet. We're doing 2. But you can see the binding is pretty basic. We've got 3 stations here that we're working with. So it's not a super complicated. This is considered one of the basic stitches. So it'll be a really fun one to work with today. Right. But you can see, again, we're going to be working with 2 signatures today, and each signature is going to be attached to its own cover. So we have this kind of nice binding here. So the paper I actually started with here was a 5x7 instead of a 4x6. So it's a little different, but 4x6 is kind of what we're starting with. So I'm starting with a 8.5x11 paper. So what I'm going to do, I have 4 pages of that. And so what I'm going to do is cut my paper in half. So I'm going to do that right now. And this will make my 2 signatures. So like the full size of the signature is going to be 8.5 by 5.5. And so if you have a paper cutter, sometimes that's a little easier to work with. But a pair of scissors works well. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut my 8.5x11 paper. So I have my 8.5x11 paper cut into 2 pieces. So I started off with 4 pages. And so when I cut it in half, I have 4 on my right side, 4 on my left side. It becomes 8 pages. So I have my 2 signatures. So the next thing we need, once we cut our pages in half, we're not stitching the signatures yet. We're going to stitch them into our cover. So I have my 2 signatures here, and after I've folded them, the size is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. It's kind of my basic size here. And we can also trim them down. So if you have a different size paper, different size cover page, we can definitely, like, you can adapt it somewhat easily. So I've got my 2 signatures here. For my cover, I'm using some watercolor paper that actually, I'm not sure how I got it, but anyway, some watercolor paper that apparently didn't work for whatever I had in mind. So I'm going to be using that as my covers today. And so what we want is a page that's slightly larger than our folded paper. And so you can see I'm starting off, my page is, this is, I think, a 5 by 7. Let me go ahead and put this down. So we may have to trim our paper a little bit. I'm starting with a 5 by 7 here, and I'm going to trim it down so it fits my paper. But what I want is a paper, a cover that has a little edge on it, right? And so on the side where the fold is in my signature, I want that to be a little wider. And so with the paper I have right now, I'm realizing this isn't enough for the side. And so what I'm going to do is kind of turn my paper this way. So I have more of an edge over here. So I'm just going to adapt it just a little bit to kind of fit with the paper I have in front of me. So because this is the width of my cover, I'm going to trim down my signature a little bit. So I'm just going to make a quick mark here. And I'm going to trim off about 1 inch. And so now my page, my fold, is against a wider part of my cover, and I have a little bit of trim on either side. Generally, when I'm doing some bookbinding, I don't need a whole lot on the side, just a little bit. And so this is about a 1/4 inch on each side. So it's not a whole lot. The main reason we do that is so we don't have any wonky pages, or there's like, it's not obvious we have wonky pages. I know I've got some shaky hands, and so I can't make things super straight. And so sometimes my inside page gets crooked a little bit. But when we have that allowance on those sides, it's a little more forgiving for us. So it's not obvious those wonky pages. So we can see what I have right here for one of my covers. I have my paper that I folded in half. That fold is kind of in the center. It's not up against the edge. And so I want to, on this edge, I want to go about 1 inch for that side. So where that folded paper is, my folded signature, I'm going to go about 1 inch up. Okay? And so this is where, like, having a ruler can come in handy. I'm just going to make a little mark here. And then cut my cover. All right. So my cover is ready. My folded paper, my signature is ready. You can see I have about a 1/4 inch on all those open sides. And on the side where my fold is on my signature, I have about 1 inch. So it's a little wider. So I'm going to go ahead and do that with my other page, my second signature and my second cover. So I'm just going to make a mark. and trim that on my signature. And then with my cover, I'm going to line them up and just make a little mark. So we have cover pages that we're working with. And again, like these are the sizes that I'm using, but you can make this larger or smaller. The main thing, the super important part to pay attention to when it comes to size is that whatever size your signature is, you want about 1/4 inch on 3 sides and 1 inch on the side that has that fold. Okay, so I have about 1/4 inch on my right and left side on my opening, and then I have that inch on my fold. And that's the important part. So you can size up and size down based on that, but you still want that size differentiation. So we have our 2 signatures that we're going to be using, and we have our covers. So our next step, once we get our sizes right, we have our places together, what we're going to do is fold that inch, right? We're going to fold that inch over on the cover. So I'm going to take my cover and just kind of fold that inch over. And this is where using that bone folder or that pair of scissors comes in handy. And so you can use that to kind of preset. So what I've done is I had my signature laying on my cover. I have about 1/4 inch on 3 sides and 1 inch on the side that has that fold. And so what I'm going to do is take that inch and fold it over, right? And I'm just going to fold it both ways so it's kind of creased. Right? So we have that inch that's folded over for that cover. And we'll do that to both sides. I'm going to go to my second signature, my second cover, and fold that inch over. And again, this is like where those scissors come in handy, or that bone folder, so you can crease those edges. I'm just folding it over both ways. So now that we have that, I'm going to put one part away. I'm just going to work on my front cover right now. I have that inch folded over. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay the cover, whatever I want on the outside, I'm going to lay that face down. So I want the blue and green to be that front cover. So I'm going to make sure that's facing down. When I get my signature, what I'm going to do is line up that crease in my signature, that fold in my signature. I'm going to line it up with the fold in my cover. So it's going to look a little funny because it'll look like it has one cover that looks right and one cover that looks really short, like a little off. But that's okay. It's okay for it to look that way. So again, we're taking one of those signatures and we're lining up that fold in the signature with the fold in the cover. So it kind of looks like a weird book here. Once we do this, we're going to poke our holes. We're going to use that awl and poke the holes. And so for us today, we're going to do 3 holes, 3 stations today. You can do more than that, but 3 is kind of a good starting place for this pamphlet binding, right? So what we'll do is we'll want 3 holes, but we want 1 hole in the center. So I'm going to take my ruler here. And make those 3 dots. I'm going to use a marker so it's a little easier to see, on camera. But I have 4.5 inches, so I'm going to go down 2.25 inch and put a dot. And then I'm going to do Now that I have my center dot, I'm just going to do an inch on either side. So for my binding here, I have 3 holes that I'm going to make. I have 1 in the very center, and then I've gone an inch on either side to do those holes. So I've got 3 holes laid out there. So my next step is to use that awl or something sharp and poke it all the way through those holes. Now we're poking it through the signature and the cover. Okay. So I'm just going to take my signature . So a binder clip would work really well. Binder clip, paper clip, anything like that. And that'll keep it all lined up for you. So if you do have a binder clip, it's good to go ahead and kind of poke that. Poke it through. But I'm just kind of poking that hole through, all the way through. And typically when I poke a hole, I just kind of wiggle it just a little bit to kind of open that hole up. And I'm just going to do that all the way through. So what I'm going to do is take the cover from my first signature and put it on top of my cover and second signature. And of course, if you have the binder clip, do that too. But I'm going to follow the holes from my cover and poke all the way down. I'm lining those holes up. So what we've done, we have our front cover and our front signature with the holes, the 3 holes poked in. And again, that's 1 hole that's in the center. And I went about an inch on either side to do the next holes. But I made sure those holes were lined up for my back cover and back signature. Okay. So now what we're going to do is start that stitching. Okay. So I'm going to take my cover and signature and kind of line it up so those folds are facing each other. I'm going to come down a little bit so it's a little easier to see what I'm doing too. So what we're going to do after we poke the holes through, we're going to do that pamphlet binding. That first step, we're going to start by taking that embroidery floss through both center holes. So I'm going to take my 2 sides, my front and my back, set them up next to each other so the folds are facing each other. And I'm going to pull out my embroidery floss. And again, we don't need a lot, about 2 feet. So I have my embroidery floss cut. I'm going to go ahead and thread my tapestry needle. All right. And so I'm going to start on the left side. And what we're going to do is we're going to thread it from the inside to the inside in one cover to the inside of the other one. And so I know that sounds a little confusing, but I'm going to open right here. I have my left side. I'm going to go through that center hole and I'm going to go through that signature and through that cover. So I'm going from the very inside of this signature to the outside of this signature. Okay. So I'm taking my tapestry needle, going the inside of that signature, the inside of the cover to the outside. So I'm starting on my left. I have my folds lined up. So it's fold against fold. Okay. And I'm going from the left side. I'm starting with the left side. I'm going from inside that signature, inside that cover to the outside, all the way through. I'm going to leave a little bit of a tail. Okay. So once I go through that first one, I'm going to go to my second signature and I'm going to do the opposite actually. I'm going to go from the outside of the cover to the inside. Okay. So the first one, I went from the inside to the outside. And so for the second one, I'm going to go from the outside to the inside. So I'm going to go through that center hole of the cover, and then the center hole of my signature. We're going to go all the way through. All right. So again, for that first one, we started by going through that center, the inside of the signature, the inside of the cover to the outside. For the second one, we're starting with the outside. We're going to the inside of the cover, the inside of that signature. So go ahead and pull that through. We want to make sure we're leaving a tail where we started, but we have them lined up. Okay. We have our folds lined up, and we went through that center. Okay. So that next step is to go down. We're going to go to that bottom hole. So I'm on the inside of my right signature. I did the center on the right signature. So I'm going to do the bottom of the right signature. I'm going to go from the inside to the outside, right? So the inside of the signature, the inside of the cover to the outside, and then the outside of the left cover to the inside, the outside of the left signature, the inside, right? So we're going all the way down, all the way through. So you want this part to be kind of tight because we're only doing 3 holes. Like it's easy for us to kind of adjust at the end. But you're wanting this part between the two, the front and the back, you're wanting that to be really close together. And I'll show with my example here, you can see that it's really kind of tight on there. Yeah, so we're just kind of pulling it through. Sometimes doing that binder clip is helpful. Sometimes just taking your time with it. I know, like, I have a really shaky right hand, and so sometimes things get kind of off kilter. So it takes me a minute to get through it. So I have a binder clip. I'm just going to kind of do it this way. So I'm holding that signature to the cover. So we've done our center, right? Let's go down. We are in the back cover now. I'm going to go down to that bottom, my right cover. I'm going to go to that bottom hole, and I'm going to go from the inside to the outside. So I'm going from the inside of the signature to the outside of the signature, the inside of the cover to the outside of the cover. And I'm going to go all the way across. So I'm going to start with the outside of my left cover to the inside, and then the outside of that signature to the inside, right? And we're going to pull it through. So you can see we're looping, right? We started with that center hole. We went all the way through. We're coming back through on the bottom hole and going all the way through. So we're pulling it. We did that bottom. We started in the center. We went through the bottom, and now we're going to come back up. We're on the left signature. We're going to come up to that top hole and do that same thing. We're going to start on the inside and go all the way through to the inside of the left signature. So again, just taking that tapestry needle, threading it through the signature, the cover, and then through the cover of the other one and the signature, and pulling it all the way through. So we're looping it again, right? So we came through that center all the way through, then we went down to the bottom, all the way through. And now we're going up to the top all the way through. So we can pull that tightly. So we have that binding. And then that last step is to go back through that center. So we started in the center, going from the inside. We're going to end on that same space because that's where we're going to tie that knot. We're going to tie it together, tie those tails together. Okay. So after we go through that top, we're going to take that tapestry needle and go through that center again. And you want to make sure that you're going through all the signatures, the cover, and signatures, all the way through to the inside. All right. Now, because we are only doing 3 holes, this is where we can kind of take that moment and make sure everything is tight, right? Because, well, if we were doing many more holes, it would take us, like, it might be a little more hard, a little more complicated to kind of pull it tight as we're going through it. But because it's only 3, we can just kind of pull it tightly at the end. So our tails are ending up together, right? And we want to be as tight as we can be here. Yep. So once you get your tails on the same side and that same signature, we're going to tie it off. So I'm just going to do a couple knots here. What's happening is that knot is going to be in that center hole. That's what we want. So we'll just kind of tie that knot together. And again, we want it to be kind of as tight as we can get it. Okay. And one of the things that helps that you can do, I'm going to kind of get a little closer. I did my first knot to hold things in place. So what I'm going to do is take one of those tails and put it on the other side of my binding here. And do my next knot hanging on to that. Does that make sense? So I'll go back. But once you do that first knot and you're tying those tails together, one of the things that just kind of helps keep things in place is taking one of those tails and putting it on the other side of that center binding, right? So you can knot it again. It's holding everything in place there. So I'm just going to do that again, do another knot or 2. So we have our cover, right? We have the tight binding, that pamphlet binding on the edge, but we have our front cover, our signature, those inside folds, the signature, and the cover. And then after you do that, you can just take the scissors and trim it. The benefit is that it's in that hole, and so it kind of stays in place. It's also on the inside, so you don't see the knot on the outside. So it's kind of like hidden altogether. And it really is for this one. It's okay if there are different sizes. Like I said, the main part that has to be measured is you want about 1/4 inch on either side where that signature is against the cover, 1/4 inch on 3 of the sides, and about 1 inch on one side. And of course you can kind of make that inside one a little smaller if you want, but that's the part that kind of folds over. And that's really what we need to pay attention to when we're doing this book, this size, this style, is having that 1/4 inch.